In that same region, there were shepherds out in the field, keeping watch over the flock by night.
The shepherds were totally the day laborers of their culture.
They were sleeping with sheep.
Most people didn't have a very high opinion of them.
It wasn't even Christmas Eve for them. It was just like a night.
No.
They were just doing their shepherd thing.
Yeah.
And like the sky was ripped open.
And an angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were filled with great fear. And the angel said to them, "Fear not."
I would imagine that if I was them, I would probably be afraid.
The angel came to the shepherds, and they were probably people of that time that had the most to fear.
It kind of makes me think of a lot of people, even in this nation, who are oppressed, pretty much for the same reasons, which is their racial background.
What they saw was so beyond their imagination that they needed to be consoled.
There's something appearing before them that they don't know, that they don't recognize, with a message that seems too good to be true.
Whatever this great sort of shaking, powerful event is, it's natural to be afraid, but you don't have to be afraid.
They had a message of love, but you can't even receive love until you're willing to actually let go of your fears. And sometimes you have to do that even before you know what's on the other side of your fear. And I think that's something that even today people struggle with. Their fears are so big that you can't get around them to even receive a message of love.
And the angel said to them, "Fear not, for behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all people."
What would have to happen for me to hear good news? Because you have such a cacophony of news, of fake news, of bad news, of gossipy news.
Today we don't get very much good news.
We've had so much bad news. We've had so much emotionally reactive news.
It's overwhelming.
It's a little depressing.
I kind of hold my breath a little bit because I'm expecting something that is going to hurt and something that's painful for someone in our world, and that's news right now.
We find out that somebody else has lost a life. Somebody else has been hurt. Somebody else has been neglected.
There's almost this palpable collective heaviness where it's like, can we take any more bad news?
I feel like all of news deals in dread to some extent. Like even the best news is like an article about how like dark chocolate can like give you antioxidants to prevent heart disease. Like it's all couched in death.
It feels very interesting and wise or important or crucial in a moment, and then literally tomorrow it has sort of diminished and dimmed.
Anytime a piece of news comes down, there are always losers and there are always winners, depending upon how the news is framed. And so even the possibility of good news that extends to everyone is really, really difficult for me to conceive.
For behold, I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people.
It's great joy because you can finally cast off the gray cloak of anxiety.
It is perhaps a secondary emotion behind it being like rest and peace. Firstly, it comes from having peace.
It's kind of unspeakable.
It starts raining and you're singing "I'm Walking on Sunshine" in the middle of a rainstorm. It's kind of like you're happy, but there's not really a reason to be.
There's something intangible about it, but there's something so deep, so rich, and so complete about it that, I mean, it just brings a smile to my face, right?
It's not a Band-Aid or a coping mechanism.
Not just satisfaction, not just a cessation of suffering, but that pervading sense that not only is it going to be okay, but there's a marvelous future ahead. The best is yet to come.
This could be kind of like great joy.
Yeah.
Are you feeling the great joy?
I'm feeling it, yeah.
There's broken glass. We're not very good at this.
I'm sorry.
But we have great joy.
You can finally scream, you can finally shout, you can finally rejoice, and be as ridiculous as you've always wanted to be.
Can you look at me so I can see my reflection in your... Hold on. Yeah, I look crazy. Okay.
These are really hot. Like I feel like
I'm sweating.
Hi, they're
No. And I know that that's not all that joy is. Joy is something that does abide through sorrow and through struggle, and you're not always happy. But I think sometimes we gloss over the fact that the joy that we have in this good news really is that kind of joy.
Of course you're going to have great joy after hearing this news, but you want to know if you're one of those people who can have the great joy in the first place.
I bring you good news of great joy that will be for all the people.
When I hear all people, it feels like everyone is included. Nobody will ever be like unincluded, and everybody is equal.
Men, women, children.
Those that don't look like you or don't talk like you.
How utterly divine it is to think that there is something that is universally inclusive.
How much I believe that is tested usually depending on who I'm afraid to look at. Who do I not believe that this is good news for based on how I interact with them or how I look at them or refuse to look at them?
But I think a lot of people move through the universe and they live in fear. They live in the fear that they won't have enough. They live in fear that the universe is aligned against them, that this is a world filled with lack, not a world that's filled with abundance. And I've observed that when people begin to think about the universe itself in a different way, when they start to think that this possibility of a universe that actually is for me, a universe that is actually filled with abundance and provision instead of scarcity and lack, they experience joy on a level that they haven't experienced in a long time, because it enables them to live free and to live light.
And so much of what that good news is like, yes, what's broken on this earth is being restored, but what has been broken between heaven and earth is also what's being restored. Don't be afraid of that divide anymore.
The sign of that is God as a baby, naked and vulnerable, in the midst of this national infanticide. Probably, as a baby, as a Hebrew baby, he was probably one of the most likely victims of violence. And yet God keeps speaking out that the sign of that, fear not, is God entering into the violence of humanity and taking it on to suffer it for us and with us.
Everybody translates the word gospel as good news. Can't we translate it as great news? Like, this is great news.
And I love that the Lord wants to celebrate with us, and the Lord is excited about being with us. And it sounds like a party. And I just want to be at the party.
And then they go away, right? And the shepherds are left in like a quiet, dark, the fire, everything's back to normal. And I could imagine the temptation being like, well, that was weird. And maybe even a reluctance to actually go and say something, because it's wild. Like, how are you going to convince people? And I feel that today. Like, I'm in that same region as the shepherds where I don't know if I should go tell someone. I don't feel brave enough.
But then also we have the same honor that the shepherds had, that the Lord meets us and gives us good news with great joy. And it transforms our lives, regardless of our station in life, regardless of where we've been put or what we do every day, that we get the same honor of being entrusted with the news.